This don't make no sense. I need to get it together. This don't make no sense. Keep coming with my stuff and stuff. It's everything. I need my life to change immediately. This ain't no sense. I need to change my life immediately. This is crazy. I need it.
All right, this is Alyssa's fault, and she sent me another one, and I have to also thank Morgan. She sent me one. We got some good stuff.
Do something, because this don't make no sense. This is crazy. Keep coming to get locked up. I'm not no jailbreaker, and I'm asking like one of people. Keep coming back to jail like this. This don't make no sense. I just keep coming back to it. Keep coming back. This don't make no sense. This is my like fourth time in 1 year. Look, I'll go back to Detroit. This is not for me. It's do too much. I'm doing too much. Smoking shit. Who the fuck smoke crack, man? I don't know why I'm smoking. Like, this is crazy. This don't make no sense. For real. This don't make no sense. This is crazy. I've got to be more careful. This is crazy. This don't make no sense. Child. This don't send me to prison. Send me to treatment. Boy, this is almost. Okay. Oh, it's and they got it on YouTube. This is great. I'm famous in the jail. Merciful Jesus. Like Jesus. No, I'm just stretching. My legs hurt.
All right, we're back on the record in the case of the state of Michigan versus Portia Ellich, both cases. At this time, it's my understanding that there are new charges that have arisen from an October 19th event. Is that correct, Mr. Johnson?
October 16th, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, I'm going to adjourn this matter for 1 week. We will be having a new complaint for violations of probation. For those new charges as well, we can address all of the charges on that particular date of November 19th for the violation of probations.
Oh, hell. All right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not going to do that, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Jesus.
We'll see you all.
Portia, I'll talk to you, okay? Thank you.
Woo, that is.
We'll talk about it.
That's some bullshit. Oh,
I'm
man,
sorry. You curse one more time, ma'am, and I'm gonna have to find you in contempt, and then you'll get time on top of what you're doing right now.
Okay,
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh man, I gotta get together.
Okay, that was fun. I haven't seen this. I don't know what's going on here. I'm told it's good, but I've been lied to before.
Mr. Huxford, did you get the time you needed?
Um, yes, Your Honor. I think that after conferring with my client, and of course taking the court's considerations under advisement, my clients are adamant that there are still facts here that point to specific direct harassment, particularly as it relates to the subsequent declarations that were filed regarding the exchanges at the courthouse and in the parking lot outside the courthouse at the last hearing date. And so they would like to proceed on those facts and pursue that order in spite of the court's advisement.
All right, let me just bring this up. I think everybody heard about the statewide court computer outage.
Yes.
Yeah, that's slowing me down here and getting some
I understand,
information
Your Honor.
here, but I do have the electronic court file, so that
Certainly.
that's all. It's all here. Okay, so yes, I do have everything. All right. Okay, and I want to bring that up because I want expectations to meet what is possible in this type of a court proceeding. Right? I don't always expect people who come to court with a problem to know exactly what all of the contours are of different causes of action and what different remedies might be available and so forth.
Certainly.
But what I don't want is for people to come to court and essentially spend their time and energy and money in many cases doing something that in the end isn't going to get them anywhere or get them a decision that they actually need. So that's why I brought that up for everybody.
If I may say something, excuse me, Your Honor. You know what?
In other words, please
So
resolve
we
this
will
case
deal
so
with
we don't have to
this
listen to it.
as we can. So the way I'm going to do this is Mr. Huxford, both the petitioners and respondent here have filed pretty extensively. I've read all the petition, the supporting evidence and declarations that have been filed since, including yours, Mr. Murphy, additional information. So
Is there an
typically what
affidavit
I
of
would
truth?
like to do in a situation like this is, at least as far as the factual issues go, decide them based on the pleadings and the exhibits and declarations. If there is anything else that needs to be brought up in terms of evidence, you can do that if it's necessary. And then other than that, hear arguments as to whether harassment's been proved and if it has, what remedies are available here. So starting with you, Mr. Huxford, is there any additional evidence that you'd like to present?
I think other than the pleadings, I think that some short testimony regarding particularly the emotional distress component, because that is part of the threshold to get there. And so ultimately what I want the court to hear is from my clients as to the effect that these interactions, particularly the interactions at the courthouse, have had on them subsequently as it relates to substantial emotional distress and their ongoing need or desire to pursue this as a harassment claim as opposed to a nuisance claim, as the court has telegraphed previously.
Certainly.
And so some short testimony from each of my clients as to the events of September 30th, which was the last hearing date.
Okay. So who would you like to call first?
Mr. Felmer, please.
Okay. Then, sir, can I have you raise your right hand, please? And do you swear the testimony that you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, it's okay if he testifies from there.
Excellent. And Mr. Thalheimer, as the court has made us aware, it's very aware of the pleadings that have brought us to this point. I want to focus more specifically on moving on from the nuisance complaint, the events that occurred at the court hearing in which there was an interaction between both yourself and Mr. Murphy and your wife and Miss Murphy. Can you tell me what happened at that last hearing date in your own words?
Can I be allowed to make a statement before I answer that?
Well, why don't you start by answering Mr. Huxford's questions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah.
To answer that question, and then later I'd like to make a statement. At the last court hearing,
Okay.
before the last court hearing, I did up a out of court settlement document, piece of paper that my wife and I both signed, and I have a copy of it here. And we never wanted this situation, this very, very severe situation to rise to this level, to go to this court right now. We didn't want that. So I typed up an out of court settlement, and wherein it said we're an agreement whereby me, my wife, we signed it. And then I told my wife, when we arrive in court for the last hearing, approach Mr. Murphy and just show him this statement, which all it says is that he can do anything he ever wants. The only thing we're asking for, only thing at all, is for him just not to bring his Camaro with a grossly illegal muffler, and also it has a cold start engine on it, where when he starts it up, it's like a giant bomb going off day and night. And he's done this before, during the day and even in the middle of the night. And all we had in the agreement, the white page agreement, is that he just not bring his Camaro anywhere near his house so it does not disturb us. But other than that, he can do anything. He can visit the renter across the street, anything he wants, but just not to, terrify us with this Camaro. That's all we ask. And what he did.
And Scott, let me guide you here.
Scott,
Hey, just
Now I'm going to the what happened.
I understand. I understand. So all of that said, but just to clarify for the court, there was an attempt or a desire to settle this out of court
Yes.
with some sort of private agreement off the books to prevent litigation that you came to the courthouse with a copy of. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then subsequently, you arrive at the courthouse, you're waiting for your hearing set to be called. I was unavailable that day, and my co-counsel appeared in my stead. So what conversation was had, to the best of your recollection, with Mr. Murphy prior to that hearing set?
So what happened, Your Honor, is that just one more bit of information. That is that my wife is a local medical doctor. She has been for the last 20 years a medical doctor here in Olympia, working for Providence Health and Services. So she, just like myself, I'm a retired United States Marine. We're both highly reputable. So she approached Mr. Murphy with this one-page document. Simply only just, he can do anything. Just don't bring the Camaro where it terrifies us day and night in front of our house. And so I watched her as she went over there with that document to Mr. Murphy. And it didn't look good from a distance. I could not hear the conversation. I stayed back far as I could away because I didn't want to interfere with anything.
Oh no, I bet there was laughing.
And so later my wife came to me and she said that Mr. Murphy had totally rebuffed her. And then he also, she just explicitly told me that he said, just wait until this hearing is over and you're going to see what's going to happen. He threatened her.
And what would you perceive to be your wife's demeanor, reaction, or response to that comment from Mr. Murphy?
Your Honor, I know my wife very well. We've been married for 34 years.
That might have to be on the thumbnail. Quite a word choice.
She was horrified. She was absolutely shocked that he threatened her and that this horror
Oh, sweet Jesus. Is this guy going to cry? Are we going to have a crier?
of this gigantic explosion would continue, waking her up in the middle of the night. We only filed this petition what happened is because he woke us up on 17th of September in the middle of the night at approximately midnight with this giant explosion. We knew that he's just trying to terrify us on purpose. And the next day she went to work and she broke her foot. She was so weak mentally and physically. It just shattered her mentally and physically. And the next day she broke her foot at work and she hasn't been able to work since then. But she told me after the hearing, I could see her. She was just shocked and horrified.
If this is who we have on the wall at Guantanamo, I'm scared.
From the way that Mr. Murphy reacted, that we just didn't want to be terrorized by his Camaro with the grossly illegal muffler and the engine. We didn't want to be terrified anymore, and he just totally threatened her. That you wait until this hearing is over, and you're going to see what's going to happen. She was, it's hard to put into words how horrified and shocked and depressed and everything else she was by the way he treated her there before the hearing started and before the judge came out.
Let me ask you a follow-up question as it relates.
The addict this morning in Minecraft court did the same thesaurus routine, and it was just as awkward.
Again, the court has made a record as to its perception of the nuisance complaint and the noise itself. You mentioned a very specific date prior to your wife's breaking of her foot, in which you felt that particular incident was retaliatory or specifically directed at you in some fashion. Why did you feel that way?
Your Honor, from the very beginning, the fact is that Michael Hoffman, the owner of that rental property across the street, I thought he was a good friend of mine. He's in the Army Reserves, and for at least a couple, 2 or 3 years, I knew him well. We were friends, I thought. And so what happened when this all started at the very beginning, and I have the text, the very first text right here, August the 5th, you can read it, Your Honor, if you'd like.
Oh my
a very
God.
long text about this whole situation, how horrifying it was with the renter across the street, which she's right over there at the other table. And then I also followed it up by calling him soon after this. So he was well aware that it's my wife and I that were filing all of these complaints.
They used to trade crystals, Judge.
That we couldn't sleep at night. There's many incidents here, and I have them all documented. My wife and I, we filed official complaints to the subdivision management company and also the homeowners association. And then also I even called the police department. Recording of my last phone call to the police department at approximately, it was close to midnight on September 17th. You know, Your Honor, I must say this is critical, that during my time in the U.S. Marine Corps over 20 years, I did 2 tours in Mogadishu, Somalia, and I acquired some very severe PTSD and also tinnitus from firing off rockets, throwing grenades.
So more specifically, Scott, you have had life experiences that make you predisposed to this type of noise, nuisance, and complaint as it relates to your life
Your Honor,
experience.
with that last incident with Mr. Murphy with his Camaro.
Yeah, he's gotten him on the reasonable man standard right there. The guy doesn't even see it coming.
Happened at exactly 11:38 p.m. I have it right here, September 17th. Immediately, I called the police, and if you had a recording of that phone call, which I should have brought in here to present to you, Your Honor.
It's not here yet, Scott. Move on.
But anyway, in that phone call, to be honest with you, Your Honor, anybody that would listen to that, they would think that I was it was beyond horrific. Because for me, whenever I hear that giant explosion in the middle of the night, I feel like I'm back in a war zone. It absolutely horrifies me and terrifies me. And I can't, we've already talked about it. There's no way I can live in that house anymore with Mr. Murphy's Camaro, that gigantic blast going off in the middle of the night. We can't live there anymore.
So
We're-
Scott, let me refocus you here. The question I asked is why do you think that particular incident was
Your rage.
retaliatory?
So like I said, Your Honor, beginning August the 5th, I texted a very long text message and also phone called the landlord. So he knew early on that it was me and my wife. He knew right from the beginning. And then what happened, what I noticed is that whenever we would file official complaints, everything would just get much, much worse.
So in other words,
There's no stop.
starting in early August, you notified the landlord, the property management company, and the HOA of your complaints. And then subsequently, it is your testimony today that every time a complaint was sent or an email was sent, that ultimately there would be some sort of what you perceive to be retaliatory conduct as it relates to this specific nuisance that was then directed at you. Is that an accurate assessment?
The revenge, it just increased, and then it came in the middle of the night by not only Mr. Murphy, but Miss Kaler, the renter at the other table. It was about a couple of days before this, she woke us up, and she has a
That might have been leading in the most blatant way I could possibly imagine.
motorcycle, a very, very loud, big motorcycle with Washington license plate, Saucy. She woke us up in the middle of the night, and like shortly before this. And so the revenge in the middle of the night, it was just so horrific. And then when my wife broke her foot, that was the last straw. That's the only reason I had to finally come to this court, Your Honor. I'm very, very deeply sorry to have to take this route and do this, but we had we're at the end of our rope, but we're going to lose our house. We're losing our minds.
So let me refocus once again on the September 30th court date. So as you testified earlier, a conversation between Stella and Mr. Murphy took place that it was your perception was an intimidation tactic and ultimately additional harassment as it relates to this case. Is that accurate?
It was exactly a cold-hearted, raw, horrific threat.
Behavior in this case is disgusting.
Received.
Okay.
That wait until this hearing is over. You're going to see what's going to happen. That's exactly what he told my wife. I'll never forget it.
Okay. And after, obviously that court hearing was continued. And so after the hearing was continued, what did you and Stella do at that point? Let me rephrase. Did you immediately exit the courthouse?
Okay, so what happened, Your Honor? And this is horrifying, because I wanted to make sure that we didn't have any interaction with Mr. Murphy or his girlfriend, who is the renter across the street. I told my wife, stay here. We need to let them leave and give them at least 15 minutes to leave, and then we will go out. And my wife was on crutches from a broken foot, and so she could move only very, very slowly. So we waited for 15 minutes, and then I told my wife, I have to go to the restroom. I went to the restroom, I came back, and then very slowly I helped her while she's on her crutches out to the front of the courthouse at the edge of the sidewalk. Actually, I didn't help her all the way to the sidewalk. I just helped her out of the front door. And then I said, I'm going to run ahead because my car is parked about a block away. And so I have to go and get the car, and then I'll meet you at the edge of the drive-through and right in front of the courthouse. I'll meet you right there at the edge of the road to pick you up in a few minutes as soon as I can get there. So I went to my car about a block and a half away. I got my car, and I pulled up at the edge of the drive-through right in front of the courthouse, right in front of the courtyard there. And my wife was there. I parked, I got out of the car, and then I went up to her and I opened the passenger door, And then she got into the car, and then I turned towards the rear of the car to go back around to the driver's side door, Your Honor. And the thing is, when I closed the door for my wife, and I turned around and I looked up, Mr. Murphy was standing right in front of me. He was standing in front of me, just like this, staring at me in the center of the parking lot.
And
I tried to pretend like I didn't see him.
about how far away, you said standing in front of you, how far
He
away
was
was
50
Mr.
feet
Murphy?
away, Your Honor, approximately. And it was
And-
caught. There's a security camera right in front of. I discovered, thinking about it later, that there's a security camera there, and so I ordered security camera footage, which I do have on my on this thumb drive, and belongs.
We talked about this.
Okay, but anyway, I was absolutely shocked and horrified to see that he was standing right in front of me, 50 feet away, staring at me, staring me down. I mean, right after I put my wife in the car, in the center of the parking lot.
And okay, so he's 50 feet away. You have shown the court the kind of demeanor. What did you interpret his demeanor and look to mean in that moment?
He is going to harm us in the future, especially if nothing's done about this anti-harassment order. He's making it crystal clear to me by standing right in the middle of the parking lot, 50 feet away, staring at me. He's making it crystal clear that
So
I'm going to get you guys.
So again, it was your interpretation of that action, not only being stared at or physically intimidated, but rather that he had waited specifically in the parking lot to make that moment happen.
It was at least after the hearing was over and the judge said we could go. From the time the hearing was over and Mr. Murphy and his girlfriend at the other table, they left. It was at least 20 minutes, at least, before my wife got in the car. It was at least 20 minutes, and Mr. Murphy and his girlfriend were out there for at least 20 minutes waiting. I consider it stalking us. Waiting the parking lot, just staring me down like this.
You testified to that again, Scott. I appreciate it. So after that hearing,
Go throw a punch. I mean,
you ultimately
seriously.
filed a subsequent declaration with the court that relayed this incident for the case record, correct?
Yeah, yes.
And what has been the ongoing effects on your mental and emotional health as it relates to that incident? Are you in more emotional distress since that incident or less emotional distress?
If Mr. Murphy
Answer the
allowed to
question.
terrify us in the middle of the night with his that is like a bomb blast when he starts his Camaro across the street in the middle of the night. I told my wife over and over again, there's no way I can live in that house anymore if Mr. Murphy is allowed to do that. There's just no way I can live there. We're going to lose. It looks like, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's no way that I can live in that house with Mr.
Which is number one, wrong.
The noise nuisance removed. It is also important for the court to understand that the subsequent actions of Mr. Murphy in the courtroom and outside the courtroom have done what to support and underpin what we're asking for today, which is that you need a protection order to prevent him from additional acts of physical harassment, stalking, intimidation, et cetera, et cetera.
Your Honor, this is very, very critical. What I'd like to say right now, this is very, very, very critical. And that is that my first interaction with Mr. Murphy was on September the 2nd. It was the first and only time I videotaped him and his Camaro, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to, you know, be seen as like you know, keeping an eye on that rental property across the street. It was only truly a stroke of luck that one day on September the 2nd that I heard noise outside, and I looked up there and I saw Mr. Murphy and his girlfriend. And so I immediately got my camcorder, and it's from inside of my house. I recorded Mr. Murphy.
He's got a camcorder. This is 1996.
And it's on the videotape, and this is exactly what is said on the videotape. It shows them in front of the rental property right across the street. And what happens is on the videotape, you can hear Mr. Murphy. He says, "I did 160 on the freeway." And then in response, his girlfriend at the other table, the renter, she says, "Oh my God."
So Scott, I'm gonna stop. Court has reviewed these videos, and we can make more in the way of oral argument to that effect. The question I asked very specifically is that the noise nuisance to now, are you more or less in fear for your physical safety since the last court hearing or not?
My speaking at least for myself, Mr. Murphy is the biggest threat. I hate to say it, the biggest threat of my life. Not only do I, from what I heard out of his own mouth, that he did 160 on the freeway, it tells me that additional fact that Mr. Murphy is not only a serious threat to society. Anybody that would do 160 miles per hour on the freeway is definitely a threat to society. Mr. Murphy is definitely also a threat to myself and my wife.
Oh, sweet Jesus. What?
Your Honor, I would like to move on to Mrs. Felmer, if I could.
Sure.
I don't have any additional questions for this witness. I certainly understand that the respondent is able to ask questions.
We're not going to do cross-examination
Okay.
during this
Okay.
proceeding. No. So Dr. Feldman, would you raise your right hand, please? And do you swear the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Mr. Huxford.
Stella, I want to just kind of reiterate for the court. Mostly we'll talk about what happened at the last court hearing, but I think that, again, it's important for the court to understand where this started. Again, you heard the same advisement of the court as it relates to the noise nuisance issue and whether or not this is the proper venue. Again, it was your understanding and recollection that following the initial communications with the landlord, the property management company, and the HOA, that there was some retaliatory conduct that took place in relation to that. How would you describe that conduct, and in your own words?
After all the complaints that we have made, I would expect that, the noise will be less or come to a halt, but that was not the case.
Instead, what happened?
Instead, what happened was that the worst part, I think, that, was on September 17th. It was at 11:38, I believe, that the loud noise woke me up. It was so loud that it was so terrifying that the whole night I was not able to sleep at all. And that was a Tuesday night. Wednesday, the following day, I was awake since I was awoken by the loud noise from his vehicle, and I could not go back to sleep. I went to work.
Go ahead.
I went to work, and around 1:20, 1:30, I was so exhausted, and I had so many patients that I had to see, and I was getting calls from different sides. And I just collapsed, and I twisted my foot, and that's how I fractured my foot.
Scott testified that there were perhaps even several of these interactions following the complaints, that ultimately, the two of you or Scott would send an email to the landlord or the property management company or the HOA, and then subsequently that would be followed by one of these events, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's talk more specifically about what has happened since. You were in attendance at the same court date that Mr. Felmer testified to, correct?
That's right.
And after a few minutes of testimony for the court, a continuance was granted, correct? Prior to the beginning of that court hearing, I want you to describe what occurred and what your purpose for talking to Mr. Murphy was at that hearing.
I actually spotted him on the right side, on my right side, on one of the benches there, and I introduced him. I asked him, confirm if that was him, and he nodded. And so I introduced myself, and I remember I told him that I really do not want to go through this. All I want is quiet and peace of mind and no loud noises to allow us to have peace at night.
And to be clear, had you
And he
ever...
cut me off and said, don't talk to me. And I tried to, have a conversation to that effect, that if we can settle this, I was hoping, because I had that paper that I just wanted to settle out of court. And he mentioned that, don't talk to me. He stopped me and wait till this effect, that wait till this hearing is over. You will see what's coming. And he followed it. It's not a threat. I was shaking inside because I am not the kind of person that will take that, because I work 11 to 12 hours a day. I take calls at night and on weekends. And for me to have no sleep, I am dealing with people I'm trying to save lives. I am clearing them for every necessary surgeries they have. Those people coming out of the hospital, they need to see me at a certain time. I have to have that. I need to be able to function mentally. I need that sleep.
And so
and to have that, and then to threaten me that, you know what, wait till the hearing is over and see what's coming.
And I think it goes without saying that comment, particularly followed by the comment, this is not a threat.
This is not
It was perceived as a threat by you and intimidation.
Even before he would utter that it's not a threat, it was already a threat for me to hear that from somebody. And so I had no recourse, but my God, how can I live my life when there's somebody threatening to do something against me, against my family?
Anxiety leads to constipation.
Quickly after that, correct? And what happened after that? What did you do after the hearing was over?
The judge, I remember the judge telling everybody that, let people go first, wait some time for you to, and this is for everybody, before you go out to your car. So I was still wearing my cam boot and crutches at that time. And so I was pretty slow. And Scott, my husband, said, why don't you go ahead and sit down here? And Scott he has a large prostate. For him to go to the bathroom, it's not like a 20-year-old, 30-year-old man that can empty his bladder pretty quickly. So it was, I would say, easily 5 or 7 minutes that he was in the restroom while I was seated there for several minutes. And for me to walk from the courthouse to where, Scott had to pick me up, it took me a little while. So I would say 15 to 20 minutes easily. That's how we waited.
Do this today, Your Honor. My health is in jeopardy right now.
What's up?
I have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
and what's been going on is
Very stressful.
I'm bleeding inside, ma'am.
The other party to come out first. So we waited at least 15 to 20 minutes easily. And as I was walking, on the curbside, on my peripheral vision, I can see Mr. Murphy standing, and he's on my left side. He was still standing there. I was just thinking to myself, why? And that's all that I can think, because I would have thought, I thought that they would have been gone already. Like the judge said, wait till the other party's gone.
And so ultimately, you and Scott specifically took your time exiting the courthouse to avoid this very
Absolutely.
type of interaction.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so you said that as you exited the courthouse and you're waiting for Scott, you noticed Mr. Murphy and his girlfriend are still in the parking lot.
That's right.
Okay. And then what happens at that point?
Well, Scott, I was waiting there for a while, and on my periphery, I can still see Mr. Murphy and the shadow of the girl standing, but I can see the gentleman there. And then I don't know how long it took for Scott to, probably a few minutes, because he was walking, but it was a fast walk. And then he got the car in front of me, and then he got out of the driver's seat and then went around to open the door for me. And I can still see Mr. Murphy standing there. And then Scott went back to the driver's side, and we drove off.
Talk to me about what mental headspace and emotional distress you've experienced since the incident at the courthouse.
We bought this house at the end of the cul-de-sac because that's what we really are hoping to get out of, peace. I need that peace because I need to protect my profession. I need to be able to take care of those people that, rely on my needs.
And so more specifically,
I could not sleep, kind of like, what if this doesn't, what if nothing happens out of this? He left us no recourse but to make this a formal legal complaint, because I do not want to even think of what may potentially happen.
and ultimately you're losing sleep, your mental health is affected by this, you're in fear for your physical safety because of what was said and because of the physical interactions. Stella, is there anything else that you want the court to know that I haven't touched on today?
Simple time. All I did all my whole life is to follow the laws. I came to my profession to help serve. I married a gentleman who is service-oriented. All we're asking is, respect. I always respect people, and I am hoping that with all the complaints that we have, that these people will honor that.
Thank you, Stella. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions. So thank you.
Right, so, Mr. Murphy?
Uh-oh.
I got served on the 22nd with the paperwork.
Just a second here. If you're going to testify further than what you have already filed, I'm going to swear you in first.
Doesn't he get to cross-examine him?
Do you swear that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I would go get in their face,
Go ahead.
cross-examine them.
Yeah, so I got served
Do it all
on
the
the
time.
22nd with the paperwork saying that I have a harassment order filed against me from both of the file members. The cop told me that the protection order was in effect. It wasn't, but he told me that it was, so I honored it. I found out that it wasn't. I still haven't been over to Miss Interval's house since then. It's been about 2 months now. I myself, I'm not a violent person by any means. I have no criminal record. As far as the accusations go, as me being retaliatory to any kind of complaints that they may have filed, I hadn't talked to Mr. Hoffman until after I was served with papers. Like, I had no idea anything was filed in the first case, or in the first place. The incident on the night of the 17th. There was a full moon. I got to I'm gonna call her Anna. I got to her because that's her name. I got to
Dark
her
and
house
stormy
around
night.
8-ish, parked my car. My car is loud. I will give them that. It is very loud. I parked my car there. We decided that we wanted to go and watch the full moon. But we didn't want to take my car because we were going to be going down a logging road. So 8:30-ish, 8:37, I think. I went outside, started my car, moved it over because her car was parked in the garage. That was the first start and stop of my car. Okay. And then as far as we went and did our thing, came back. She parked her car in the garage, and I work in construction, and it was a Tuesday night, so I had to go get my work van. So it was 11:30 when I left. It was late. I started my car, go get my van, and come back. That one, I can honestly say I'm sorry for that one, but like I had to go get my work van. It's where all my tools are. The other incidences were the one where he recorded me in the house, in his house. I didn't sit there and idle my car. I didn't rev the engine. I started my car and I left. It was also 9 o'clock, somewhere around 9 in the morning, well within the ranges of sound ordinances and stuff like that. Again, not retaliatory. I had no idea there was an issue going on at that time either. I started speaking and dating Anna around the beginning of August. So I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've actually been to her house in my car, because I normally go over there during the work week because it's 5 minutes from my job and I have my work van. So like my car has hardly ever been over to her house. And I know that I'm jumping all over the place, but mine's kind of flustered with all these accusations saying that I'm a violent person. In regards to the interaction Miss Felmer and I had in the courtroom, she came in by herself, asked me my name. I said that yes, I was Charles Murphy. She sat down next to me, tried to talk to me, and I said, "You shouldn't be talking to me." I said it to her twice, and then she presented her case anyways with the piece of paper saying this is the agreement. And I'm like, you guys didn't even try to contact me in person at all. I hadn't even met these people until that day. They could have come across and say, "Hey, your car's really loud. We're having a hard time sleeping." Cool. All right. I'll do my best to not be loud and make sure that you guys are good. I mean, it's simple things like that. Like this whole thing could have been avoided. However, I've been raised to, once you start something, you finish it. So they initiated the courts to be involved in this, which rightfully so. They feel like that I'm a threat. And to settle out a case, I firmly felt it was very unfair because of the accusations that they were saying against me. So I was like, when I told her, wait and see, I also followed it up with, that's not a threat. What I mean is, let's wait and see what the courts have to say about it. Because that's what I followed it with. I would never threatened her physical harm or her husband or anything in that matter, to the fact that like, you guys started the court proceedings. We're going to go all the way through the court proceedings. We're going to see what the judge and jury have to say, and we'll go from there. In nowhere through the two to 3 months that this has been going on, have I ever made a threat to them. I've never done any of the things as far as like retaliatory shit. Excuse my language. I didn't mean that. Retaliatory stuff in what they have in their mind as far as what I'm doing. And as far as the interaction outside the courthouse, Anna and I were.
I actually think this guy's doing a good job. He sounds really calm, and I understand he's doing that in court, but he's doing a nice job. He's believable.
Out by her car. I was leaning on her car, back against it like this. It happened to be facing directly where Mr. Thalheimer went and picked up his wife. My face naturally looks angry all the time. It can very much come across as me being threatening. It's just my face. We were out there for a while. She and I were talking back and forth. We were talking about what we were going to do for the rest of the day, because we both had taken the day off to come to the proceedings and whatnot. And yes, I was out there, and I was 50, 60 feet away. Didn't make any threatening gestures. I just happened to be looking in that direction, which was where he parked to pick her up. There was nothing in my actions that were threatening from me. I understand how it could be perceived that way just because my demeanor is usually slouched and I got a grumpy look on my face all the time. I can understand where that came from. However, no threats, no nothing. Like I'm not a violent person by any means. And like I've had to take 3 days off of work now, and being a single father working a blue collar job, like that's pretty detrimental to the finances. So like I need the courts to understand that like this thing needs to be dropped completely, because like I don't have any issues with them. I'm not trying to like harass them. I'm not trying to do anything to make their lives worse. I didn't even know that there was a problem until the 22nd of September. And they've been saying that the problems have been going on and been getting to me since the beginning of August when I started dating her. So like I'm not understanding how I could be a threatening person and I had no idea that anything was going on. Outside of that, I also don't feel like because I know in their agreement, or not agreement, but their petition, that they want me to cover the costs of their court fees and stuff like that. But I honestly don't feel like I should have to cover their costs for something that could have simply been solved with, hey, coming to me as a person, like, hey, your car is very loud. Could we not? So that's basically all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Okay. All right. Mr. Murphy, I'm sure that you can appreciate that it would be difficult to, live in a situation like that where that kind of noise is getting made from a car or from anything else, when people are just trying to quietly enjoy their own home, their own property. And that's true for anybody, right? And I mean, Cooper Crest is probably one of the most sort of crammed together residential neighborhoods of single family homes in Olympia.
Absolutely.
So it's probably even more important that people are sort of aware, keep in mind that the things they do that make noise are pretty likely to be heard and perceived by the neighbors.
Mhm.
And that if those things are, extra loud, they're going to be even more disturbing than if you were living, out in the boonies somewhere. And that's just common sense.
Yep.
So, when the Thalheimers come in here with this complaint, they're not, this isn't just made up stuff that's out of the blue that is unimportant and, doesn't mean anything because they're just whining about the fact that somebody's making noise. Okay. They don't have to put up with that. And, they've got options in what they can do. That's why I raised this issue in the beginning, because, they shouldn't have to deal with this, right? And if you're not gonna tone it down, you might end up in a place where it's not just their court costs you're going to have to pay, right? So you don't want to damage somebody's quiet enjoyment of their property. That can lead to a civil judgment against you.
That's understandable.
And so there's that on the one hand, and on the other hand, though, as I said in the beginning of this, I tell people frequently, I can listen to your issues, but I can't send you home with a good neighbor, right? I can't fix a bad neighbor. That isn't something that a court can do. Okay? Courts have different powers that can be applied. For example, in an action like this, the person can be ordered to stay away from another person, to not communicate with another person, to not keep them under surveillance or stalk them. I mean, those are all things that this court can do in the context of an anti-harassment order. But I'm concerned that doesn't really get at the issue. The issue seems to be making an awful lot of noise at inconvenient times that disturb people, right? And in the Thalheimers case, you've got, a gentleman who, in service to his country has post-traumatic stress disorder. which makes him especially sensitive to things like that.
Mm.
And then you've got Dr. Thalhammer, who's a professional who has, yeah, I mean, you know how it is with doctors, right? They have high stress jobs, they're working all the time, and they've got to, they've got to be at their best in order to give the service that's expected of them to their patients and their community. And if that's interfered and interrupted, then it doesn't happen. You heard her concern about that.
Mhm.
Okay, so, I don't want you to think that this is unimportant. Now, there's a limited amount of relief that I think the court can offer here, and I'll get into that in a minute. But one thing that occurs to me is that, as you said, Mr. Murphy, you didn't know that this was a problem until you got papers served on. And then Dr. Thalhammer tried to present an agreement to resolve the issue sort of informally. People aren't always good at resolving their own disputes when they have them. But there are options for that. I mean, in a lot of cases that involve people who live in the same neighborhood, who, when they leave court, they're going to still be neighbors. I will frequently recommend that people go to the Dispute Resolution Center to try to work something out. The Thurston County Dispute Resolution Center, they have mediators. They have people whose job it is to help peacefully resolve disputes in the community and come up with functioning, working agreements for you. And I frequently recommend their services because what they do is try to make it so that you can live together peacefully in your neighborhood and address, the issues that you are in dispute over in a way that's fair to everybody. And you design those solutions yourself. And their work is great. It doesn't always work, but frequently it does. So, I mean, I'm commending their services to you sort of no matter what happens, because I think that, when you go home, you're going to be home. You're not going to be in court anymore. You're going to be neighbors again. So I'm putting that out there for you, because I think in the end, that might be where a solution lies. Now on sort of the more formal, okay, before I get into that, you have a question for me, Mr. Murphy?
I hear you on that one, but I don't live there. I live in Yelm. So like I'm hardly ever over there with my car. So like I understand what you're saying as far as like being neighbors and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I get that.
Well, I recommend that because I think that it works really well, a lot of times better than litigation.
Yeah.
Okay. But now going back to kind of the heart of the matter, the legal issue that I have in front of me here, and the law that governs sort of the field of what's possible here. A couple things come to mind to me. And one is what is unlawful harassment? That's kind of the heart of the matter, right? So unlawful harassment's a knowing, willful course of conduct directed at a specific person that seriously annoys, harasses, or is detrimental to that person, serves no lawful purpose. Okay. I could imagine that, turning on a car engine at all hours of the night doesn't necessarily serve a lawful purpose, especially if the purpose is to bother somebody. That's clearly not a lawful purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that into account. Now, the course of conduct, though, would have to cause a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress. Okay. I said it before, and I think they both said it. The Thalhammers are maybe sensitive people. They have reason to be sensitive. Maybe they're a little bit thinner skinned than the average person because of their circumstances. So I don't know if a reasonable person would suffer substantial emotional distress. They might, depending on how frequently it happens and under what conditions. So that's part of the law that I'm looking at. The other part that I'm looking at defines what that course of conduct means. What is that? Okay, and in this context, a course of conduct is a pattern of conduct that is composed of a series of acts over a period of time that shows a continuity of purpose. In other words, are you doing it for the same reason over time? And that course of conduct can include any form of communication, contact, or conduct. Okay, so the conduct that is at issue here again is the car, the motor. Now, this doesn't affect constitutionally protected speech, so we're going to keep that in mind too. So with those definitions in mind, can I conclude based on the evidence that's been presented here that a course of conduct has occurred that constitutes unlawful harassment toward the followers? And I think that's a close question. It's a close question. Looking at the surrounding circumstances, the Thalhamers have offered to me Mr. Murphy's conduct at the court hearing in September that resulted in a continuance. The offer to settle the case, and then the confrontation in the parking lot. And that it was clearly upsetting to them the way that rolled out. But Mr. Murphy, you've offered the explanation that you didn't want to talk about any settlement while you were there in court, and that when you were out in the parking lot at that point, you weren't specifically doing anything to try to intimidate or scare anybody. You were just standing there with your natural sort of demeanor and disposition. Mm-hmm. If somebody cast a glance over your way, they might think that guy looks a little angry. That's kind of your explanation. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's not unreasonable. So I'm keeping in mind that here, the burden of proof is on the petitioners. In other words, they have to show by a preponderance of the evidence that they're entitled to this order that they're seeking under the law and the definitions that I just explained. And I'm keeping in mind that I have to apply the reasonable person standard, not the unduly sensitive person standard, but the reasonable person standard.
I told you this in the beginning.
Now, in this case, as much as I sympathize with what's going on here, and I'm not easily fooled, I don't think that the Thalhamers have carried that burden of proof. So for that reason, I'm not going to issue the order that's been requested here. But before I let you go on that, I will keep in mind that if the pattern continues, there may be a different conclusion. So if they come back with another petition and it says after November 12th of 2024, there was all this same stuff going on with the car, I'm also going to consider what happened before today, meaning the stuff back as early as September and August. And that would constitute a pattern. So if there's a change or discontinuation, then terrific. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And then the other thing is, before I let you go, is I really do commend the Dispute Resolution Center to you. I know that Mr. Huxford knows what I'm talking about. Mr. Murphy, I've explained it a little bit, but the Thurston County Dispute Resolution Center offers their services to people to, and it may even involve Anna, since she's the homeowner, to, sit down and mediate a solution to this and then have a happier, quieter, peaceful, enjoyable neighborhood for everybody. All right.
Merry Christmas.
I've explained myself and my rulings. I'm going to commit both of those to writing, and then you folks will be free to go.
I do have a question, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of my work van, all of my vehicles are modified because I am in the car community. I frequent that. I go to car mates as far as like sanctions ones and stuff like that. I'm not one of the people that do the hoonigan stuff. So does that just mean that I won't be able to bring any of my vehicles to Anna's house?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I don't know, because I don't have enough evidence to decide whether your vehicles are illegally modified or not.
Right.
Okay, they might be. But that isn't strictly, determinative. It's a question of whether you're disturbing their peace.
Yeah.
Right. And disturbing their peace is actionable in different ways. One would be they could sue you for that. And the other way would be they could seek an anti-harassment order like this. I would say that the way to avoid the problem is just not to make the noise. Clerk will have copies of both orders for you both in just a moment.
Thank you.
Tested positive for methamphetamine June 24th. You understand that charge?
All right. So he just softs up the petitioners because he knew he was going to rule against them. It was kind of infuriating getting there, but he got to the right result. He didn't want the defendant to misconstrue it as just do whatever the hell you want, which I think is fair. He's like, it's not there, but we're borderline. Knock it off. That's the order, right? So he doesn't grant the petition, but he's like, if I have to keep hearing this 5 times, eventually I'll grant it. Now, for some additional fun, this one isn't as long, but let's watch another addict try to BS Judge O'Donnell. Huh? That's always fun.
Yes, Your Honor. Tested positive for methamphetamine July 30th. You understand that charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Feldman, how does he want to proceed today?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. At this time, after discussing this with Mr. Brown, it is my understanding that he does intend to plead guilty to these violations. I think he is ready to take responsibility for obviously what had occurred. I think that after...
Well, hold on. Is that what you want to do, Mr. Brown?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, what's your plea to that charge, those charges?
Plead guilty.
I'll accept your guilty plea and find you guilty. Go ahead, Mr. Feldman.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. As I mentioned, he's been in for 42 days since these most recent violations. I think he, is understanding that he, whatever it is that he's supposed to be doing with probation, whether it's this reporting requirements, whether it's obviously, not doing things that are illegal, not taking any kind of, whether it's medication or drugs, putting those things in his body, he has to abide by the rules and the laws of the state of Ohio. I think that he knows that, what he's looking at and what he's facing. I believe that he also does acknowledge that I think maybe in the past he never really felt that there was any kind of a concern that he had or issues that he had regarding any kind of drugs or medication. I think at this time we're looking to see if he can be given the opportunity to take some sort of treatment program, whether that be a jail treatment program to start now or whenever the next program would start, and or combine that with some sort of intensive outpatient program. He has never had the opportunity, I don't believe, in the past to do any sort of treatment program for any of his issues. I also think that the partial reason for that is that I don't believe he ever really fully acknowledged or admitted that
This guy basically tries to pull the tequila lollipop routine, and it's fun in exactly the way you'd expect.
there was any kind of issue with drugs or anything of that nature. I do believe that he, is at least aware
Absolutely.
or does feel that,
Same exact problem.
hopefully some sort of treatment program would be beneficial to him and would assist him in, getting on the right track and not, having any future issues or violations of any kind, or obviously new cases or any new violations of the law. I also think obviously if this court would be amenable to extending his probation, maybe making his reporting requirements more intensive, back to how they've previously been, would hold a little bit more of that incentive over his head to get him to continue to follow the rules. So at this time, we would be asking for something of that nature since he's never had that opportunity previously. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brown, what do you want to tell me?
I want to say, Your Honor, I would like to say that I've been on probation for going on 18 months now. I've been on probation for going on 18 months now. I have 0 police contact. I've stayed out of trouble. I kept a job. I keep a job the entire time I've been on probation. I recently just got a promotion at my job, well as a raise. Also on probation, I just have gotten my security level lowered due to doing the things I'm supposed to have been doing on probation. Although I am in front of you today because I slipped up and everything, and That's why the reason I'm admitting to my wrongdoings for, indulging in things activities that I shouldn't have been indulging in. And I would like to ask, with that being said, if granted the opportunity of any type of treatment or IOP, that I will complete that and attend every session and everything so that I can, if willing, I can continue to have my job that I have and take care of my responsibilities as a man and continue to take care of my family. Thank you, Your Honor.
Why are you using meth?
I was using prescriptive pills that wasn't prescribed to me, though.
I got a question for you. Yeah. Thanks for all that BS. Why are you using meth?
What, whose prescription pills were you using?
Adderall.
Now, whose? Who are they prescribed to?
My aunt.
Okay, but Adderall doesn't result in a methamphetamine positive test. So what you're telling me is not true.
That's what it was supposed to be. The pills were supposed to be Adderall pills.
Okay. Well, Adderall's not going to
I see you're not responding, so I'm going to make it clear. You're a liar.
provide a positive meth test.
Correct.
Okay, so what you're telling me is not true. Why didn't you show up to probation on July 8th?
I was calling, because I didn't have Miss Crooks, I didn't have her card on file because I just had recently been appointed to her by getting my security level lowered. So I didn't have her number on file, but I was calling Mr. Dave Tompkins. I left a message on his voicemail. I sent him a text message. And then that's when I kept calling. And then I found her card. When I found her card, I called Miss Crook. I couldn't get a hold of her. I sent her a text message from the number that's on the card, also the other numbers on the card. And then that's when I contacted Mr. Dave Tompkins again, and he transferred me over to her. That's how I was able to get a hold of her this time when I came in.
Well, why didn't you just show up on July 8th like you were supposed to?
I didn't know I was supposed to show up on July 8th. That's why I was calling to see when was the day.
When was the last time you were there before July 8th?
June 24th, sir.
And you were given a urine test to take that day, right?
Correct.
So you knew it was going to be positive, so that's why you didn't show up on July 8th, right?
No, I didn't know it was going to be positive.
Huh?
I didn't know it was going to be positive.
Okay. How is meth showing up in your system?
No, I told you the only thing that I took was supposed to be the Adderall, Your Honor.
So why were you taking the Adderall?
To stay woke, to stay focused as I was driving my job that I had and everything, because I was driving to Akron and I was falling asleep.
How did you find out you tested positive on June 26th?
Because when I came July 31st down here, that's when I was told.
Anything to say, Ms. Crook, about this whole thing? You didn't know where to go or who to go to or anything like that?
He had the same reporting schedule with me that he had for the past couple of months with Mr. Tompkins. It was the second and fourth Mondays of the month because he reported late night, and those are our 2 late nights a month.
So last time I seen Mr. Tompkins, he told me when I go see Miss Crook now, I will only report once a month.
So then
It's
why
about
didn't
me
you,
reporting?
why didn't you show up on the 22nd if it was only going to be once a month?
I came the 24th to let the month before.
Huh?
I came the 24th.
Okay, if you were going to report once a month, that meant you weren't going to report the 8th, you were going to report 2 weeks later, which would be the 22nd of July. Why didn't you just show up on the 22nd if you're only going to report once a month?
I don't know. I didn't know the exact date that I was. I just knew it was at the end of June.
You're on probation, right?
Correct.
Okay. You got a lousy record, right? right?
Yes,
You don't think you do?
guess so.
Well, I don't know. I mean, as a juvenile, you got an attempt to convey a deadly weapon, a school safety zone, and a CCW. As an adult, you got a attempted murder with a criminal gang activity spec and a 1-year gun spec that you went to prison for. You get out February of 13, and then the next month, you get an illegal conveyance of weapons, drugs of abuse onto a governmental facility in Richland County. Then in April of 15, you get a federal weapons charge. You go to prison.
Yeah, I'd say it's bad.
Your Honor, can I say something?
And then after you get out of prison, April 21st of 21, April 2nd of 21, you pick this up in July of 22. It seems like you got a bad record. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think that, as you could obviously imagine, he does have a record. He has had his trips to prison and his issues with the law.
But my issue is not his record. If my issue was his record, I would have sent him to prison on this case, right? But I didn't. My issue is he's screwing around on probation. And he's testing positive for meth, and he's telling me he's not using meth. And he's telling me he doesn't know when to report. I mean, that's nonsense. Now, did you just start suddenly using Adderall in June?
That was the first time I ever used it. Correct.
Okay. No, I don't believe that, okay? I don't believe that you're testing positive for meth taking Adderall. I believe that you've been taking meth. You've probably been taking it all along.
No, you're right. Not at all.
Okay. If you're just taking Adderall, then why do you need treatment? If you don't use drugs and you haven't used illegal drugs since you've been on probation, why do you need treatment?
Because clearly the Adderall, it wasn't just prescriptive Adderall. It must have been something else.
Does your aunt know she's being prescribed meth?
I don't know.
Does your aunt know you were using her pills?
No, she doesn't.
Okay. What's your aunt's name?
Melody.
Melody who?
McMillan.
Does she know that you're in jail right now for using her pills, supposedly?
No, she doesn't.
Okay. I still don't believe that you tested positive for meth taking Adderall. Just so we're clear about that.
Your Honor, I think if he, given the opportunity hopefully with some sort of a jail treatment program, and
But I'm at a loss as to know why he needs treatment if he's not using meth or cocaine or heroin. Why does he need drug treatment?
That was a drug that was in my system. So I've been in my system more than once.
I believe if he
even get addicted.
If he had proper assessment and had told them.
See, I tried to get him an assessment to NeoCap when he was sent for this PSR, and he didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want anything to do with treatment.
I didn't say that.
What happened with NeoCap, Jamie?
I believe Jan saw him before this PV on August 2nd, I believe.
Okay.
And he was rejected for placement.
He was rejected.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was on August 2nd. He was not amenable to the structured treatment environment provided.
What does that mean, not amenable? Is that their determination that he's not amenable?
Based on what conversation she had with him, that he was not amenable.
What conversation did you have with her?
That's what I was supposed to do.
What?
That's what I was thinking about, Your Honor. Like she told me what NeoCap was. She told me everything that NeoCap would expect of me. And before I left out, she asked me, would I be willing to take NeoCap? I told her yes, and she said, okay, well, when you go in front of the judge and everything, I think you should admit, to whatever it is that you're here for, your jury screen. I said, okay. That was the last thing I seen that woman, and last thing I said before leaving out.
Okay, so I got your incompatible story about the meth versus Adderall. I got the incompatible story about the one side of NeoCap and your side of NeoCap. But my question remains, why would you need drug treatment if you're not doing drugs? If you're just taking a prescription drug, even though it's not yours? Why would you need drug treatment?
Because it wasn't mine, but it shows that I have methamphetamine in my system.
Okay. Well, I know that. I mean, I know you have methamphetamine in your system, but you're telling me you weren't taking methamphetamine.
Yeah, but that was my first time even doing what it was supposed to be. It was Adderall as well, but
You see, these are kind of rhetorical questions. He knows you're doing meth. He wants you to say it. Okay?
I've never
What
knew
drugs have you taken over the course of your life?
marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Just smoked a couple joints. That's it, Judge.
Marijuana. I've taken the ecstasy pills before.
I mean, what's the point of all this?
What's the point of?
What's the point of keeping you on probation?
So I can stay on the right track.
Okay, but you're not on the right track. You're in jail
Correct.
because you're taking meth and telling me a bullshit story and then not showing up, which is another bullshit story because you know that you were still supposed to report on July 8th, okay? If you didn't think you were supposed to report on July 8th, you certainly, if it were once a month, should have reported on July 22nd. And you just act like you're kind of a standby observer who's not really involved in what's going on here. You're the one on probation.
Correct.
It's your responsibility.
Correct.
So where do you work?
A JV janitorial service.
What do you do?
I clean up. I uphold contracts cleaning up buildings, sir.
Commercial buildings?
Yes.
So what kind of treatment do you think you need?
That's why I was asking for outpatient so I can continue to keep my job and take care of my family and everything.
Why would I believe that you're going to show up to outpatient treatment if you didn't show up to probation?
I showed up to probation. It was just days later. 'Cause I didn't know the exact date.
It's
But
not like an invitation, it's like a requirement, right?
say it again, sir.
I said it's not an invitation to show up when
It's
you want,
required,
it's a
correct,
requirement.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Wouldn't you rather just go to prison and be done with this stuff?
Not at all.
Why not?
Because that way I want to be able to take care of my responsibility as a man and take care of my family.
Well, you're not exactly doing that when you're using meth, right?
No, I'm definitely taking care of my family.
Not if you're using meth. I don't know. Well, I don't know what the fuck this is. Last time you got an evaluation, was it more counseling?
Correct.
And I don't know what you told more counseling, but they say you didn't have any drug problem. What do you remember telling them?
They said I didn't have a drug problem.
Huh?
You said they said I didn't have a drug problem.
Yeah, they didn't recommend any treatment for you.
I had to go to more counseling because I was on federal probation and I had to do aftercare at more counseling. As part of my finishing and completing federal probation.
Where does your aunt live?
On Lenacrave Avenue.
Where were you living?
On East 130, on East 116th Street.
Okay, so you just went over her house and grabbed the stuff out of her medicine cabinet?
No, I went over her house, and as I was talking to my cousin, her son, about me driving long distance to work and standing up and everything, he says he believes his mother has some Adderall pills upstairs, and he's the one that had brought them to me.
What were you driving for?
With my company that I work for, with the company I work for, we had a contract that I had to drive to in Akron. And I was driving to Akron every morning from Independence to Akron and back.
Okay, I'm going to keep you on community control because
That shocked
I'm
me.
stupid like that sometimes. 44 days in jail with credit for 44. You're going to complete an IOP. I don't want any bullshit that you're going to say, I don't have a problem, so they told me I'm not going to do one. Do an IOP, complete it, and follow all the recommendations. No drugs or alcohol with screens. Full employment, pay the cost and supervision fees. Now you're going back on, he's going on intensive supervision probation. And you're going to be tested every week.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
So, now, don't misunderstand this, because I still don't believe you about what you told me. Anything else, Mr. Feldman?
Nothing further, Your
Ms.
Honor.
Crook?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right.
Well, there you have it. He surprised us all. He surprised us all, but he recognized it. I can see where he's going. He jacked it up, so he's getting tested all the time. I don't think the guy will make it. He'll end up back in jail. But he was gonna let him do it. My guess is he has a good relationship with his attorney. But he hated doing it, and he told him he didn't believe anything he said while I was doing it. It's still always fun in there. That's such a fun room. I think I haven't done this for a while because I used to make a playlist for all the judges, but he's come on the scene. There have been so many quality appearances. I think I'm going to have to make a Judge O'Donnell in the Minecraft courtroom playlist. When I get a minute, I will do that. All right. There you go. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. I will see y'all soon.